This is Chintan Vaishnav. I am the Mission Director of Atal Innovation Mission. I suspect I know a number of you in this crowd. I'm sorry I'm having to chat with you via this video message as opposed to being able to be with you in person, which I really wanted to be. But there's a family emergency I have to take care of, and therefore I'm unable to be there. I'm thankful that ISBACON agreed to let me convey this message through video. I was keen to be there, or I'm keen to relay this message to you at this point because I really see that there are some issues that we must take up going forward for our nation startup ecosystem that we really cannot take on without an entity like ISBACON playing an important role in these issues. And what I want to relay to you is a two-part message on how I see the importance of ISBACON and how I see we want to organize further so that it can take up the issues I'm going to talk about. The two parts are, one is ISBACON's role internal to our nation, and second is its role external to our nation, or as we represent ourselves globally. Let me first speak to the internal to our nation topic. So we stand at an inflection point as a nation. I can say this sitting inside the Niti Aayog, although what I'm relaying to you is not Niti Aayog's views, is my own views. But what I can see is that in the years to come, in fact, the near future, we will need some major issues to be represented by people like ISBACON. For example, we do very little procurement from startups today. We do it in defense. We don't do it in many other areas. I know there's awareness about it. We are talking about it in the government all the time. But where will be that constant pressure and demand for it come from? It requires representation of startups and incubators and so on in some collective fashion. That collective representation has to happen forcefully, because otherwise we're not going to be able to break through and do procurement on scales at which we should do it. And if we don't do that, then in many sectors, we will kind of, as they say, peter along, but we will not really make a big difference. Right. So that's one issue where collective representation is needed. Let me say one more issue. For example, if you look at two numbers, the percentage rise or fall in number of startups year over year. So what was the rise compared to last year in the number of startups, for example? That's one number. And second number is the percentage of rise or fall in the public plus private investment in startups year over year. Then I think you can see something like, you can argue that, let's say, if the number of startups grew 80%, but the amount of investment grew only 40% as compared to last year, for instance, we can say that there's 40% more risk taking because people are doing startups, as opposed to risk underwriting, right? If it were the other way around, then we might say, okay, there's more risk underwriting than risk taking. For such a measure, what we see is that for last several years, by and large, with the exception of the COVID year, our number of young people taking risk is far higher than the amount of risk underwriting that's going on. Can this go on forever? I don't think so. I think we, again, collectively have to say that how will we raise money? How will we pay startups on time? I see the processes, and we're trying to battle on behalf of startups every day inside the system. So these efficiencies and both the amounts and the efficiency, we will have to bring it to startups. Otherwise, I don't think people will keep taking risk if we're not efficiently underwriting risk. Up to a certain level, I'm not saying that everybody who doesn't even deserve money gets money. That's not the point. The point is, when you have a good idea and you're doing good work, you should have a reasonable chance of getting funded. You know, this requires collective effort and representation. It is not a job of a single startup to do that. I would these are issues internal to us where collective representation is the only way we can really accelerate the pace of solving these problems. Let me speak to the external part of it that is representing us globally. Now, you remember that last year we had a Startup 20 in India, and it was so vibrant and so open, and there were so many countries that participated and so on. This year, Startup 20 Summit just took place in Brazil. Now, Brazil had a very different setup than India's setup. In India, the government was the one that said we should add Startup 20 to G20. And it provided all the support. At least 80-90% of the financial support also came from the government. In Brazil, it was exactly the opposite, in the sense that in Brazil, it was run by an association called Startup Association called ABS Startup, AB Startups. ABS Startups is Latin America's largest startup association. It's like saying we have a CII for Asia, that kind of thing. But it does not have the backing of the government like we have in the startup movement in our country. So this is like saying they have a CII, but the Ministry of Commerce equivalent does not recognize them. Think about it. It's a very, very different setup. And you could see it was a very different momentum. It was a very different undertaking for them, etc. And what we learned was many nations around the world really appreciate that India has a vibrant ecosystem. They want to learn from us. They would rather partner with us than many other nations. And how will we build that international brand and take our startups international and represent our country internationally? I think collectivization is the only way. And I don't know what ISBACON's plans are in that direction, but we really need your help, because even a few months ago, as you remember, the World Intellectual Property Organization of the United Nations, they have signed an agreement with Atal Innovation Mission to take our templates to countries of the global south. This is not something that I imagine only government doing. I imagine this to open up opportunities for our ecosystem. And those opportunities have to be collectively anchored. And we really have to represent ourselves such that we really can tell the world that, yes, we do have a very functional ecosystem. And we're willing to work with you, teach you, create opportunities for you and us. I think that's the juncture at which we stand, and I hope that ISBACON will take up this issue of active collective representation to participate in these issues that are forthcoming, and without solving them efficiently, we really can't go to the next orbit. Once again, many thanks.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.